Hey, another Build How Group tutorial. This is tutorial number 2. I'm developing in the Visual Studio development environment, and today we'll be introducing different data types and how to use them, what they store, and what they are. So the first data type I'm going to use, I'm going to assume you've watched the previous tutorial and know basically what all this is. I'll just run quickly over this. This is the main function. All C++ programs must have it if they're console based. And all the code must lie inside it, unless you have an there are some exceptions to this, but we won't go into them right now. The first type of data I will do is a boolean. A boolean is a true or false value. Uh, True being equals 1 and false is 0. Not sure how intuitive that is, but that's how it is. We're going to call the variable var for variable. And you could just close it like that. All lines of code have to end with this semicolon thing, and that is absolutely acceptable right there, but it has no default value. I think default value might actually be false, but it's good habit to actually show the default value, because then if you look at it quickly you can be like, okay, I know it's false. Like straight away you know it's false. Okay, so there are obviously two values for booleans, that's true and false. You can do it, you can set them using like that. You can access them later, going equals true, var equals false. So at this point, the variable is created. Another word for created is initialized. It means a slightly different thing, but initialize is used more often in coding, because initialize is kind of implies loading into memory and stuff. So the variable var is initialized and set to the value true right here. We go to the next line of code. Var is set to true again, so it doesn't really do anything. And then it's set to false. Okay, so that's basically how the Boolean variable works. There are other functions like not. Ooh, I think it might be capital. No, it's lowercase. Not true, like that. Why can't I spell? And that would be not the value that it currently is. So if it was not true, sorry, it would be false. Okay, so the exclamation mark means not. You may actually be able to type not like that. I'm not entirely sure. You can't. Doesn't matter. Scrap that. Yeah, you can't. So that's the Boolean data type, and I'll go on to the next data type, which will be characters. I'll put that down there. Okay, characters are basically letters. We'll call this variable. Okay, the basic variable structure. A variable is what this is what I'm about to make. A variable is something that stores data. A variable is like a bucket. A bucket stores sand or water or whatever. So it's a storage container. Okay. A variable is the same, except variables are often used to store specific types of data. So as a mug is used to store hot liquid. A character is used to store letters and numbers and all values from the ASCII table, which we'll go into in a moment. Okay, so we'll call the variable var character, because that's what char is short for. We'll rename that to boolean. Okay, so again, you can set it like that. That's perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But again, it doesn't have a default value. You don't know what its default thing is, and if you looked at it quickly, you wouldn't really be able to tell what it was. So it's better to have a default assigning value. Okay, characters are set using these marks, like one quotation mark. I can't remember what they're called, but anyway, the stuff is set between them. So if I wanted to set character to A, you put A between the two half quotation mark things, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Okay, I guess they're called apostrophes, and so the way characters are set is the same way. You'd be like character equals, and then after the equal sign is the value you want to set it. So if I say it equals B, first line of code, it goes character is equal to A. Then the program goes to the next line, it goes character equals B. Character no longer equals A at that point. A is completely wiped. It has no idea it ever equaled A at this point. So if I said character equals C right here, it would also not store B. It would also not store A. Character would only equal C. I hope that makes sense. So the equivalent code would be just that. Character equals C, because it ultimately does equal C, no matter what. So that's pretty much all characters are. They stem from something called an ASCII table, and I'll put a link in the description box to a table of them, and they have the numbers that correlate to each character, so you can have a look at those, fiddle with them. Okay, so the next data type we're going to do is called a integer. Integers are declared with the shortening int, which is short for integer, and they are numbers, just normal numbers. They have to be whole numbers. So they're set the same way: the name of the data type, the name of the variable, and then you can assign it a value, and I'm going to assign it 10. So same thing as before. You can do the name of the variable equals 10. That's assigning it. You can set it to something else, 50, that kind of thing. It's the same as all other data types. So I'm going to skim through them now. You've got the basic idea. Another data type is float. They're called floating point numbers, and they are decimal numbers. They can store a very high number of decimal places. They're used to store accurate values when precision is required. Floating points can store large numbers, but not as large as integer. In all numerical values, there are signed and unsigned values. So back to integer, you could have an unsigned integer, and they are declared just by writing unsigned int. These cannot be negative. They can't be. It doesn't work. Well, they can be, but it will store the wrong value. And I'll explain why in another video, but basically that isn't a correct statement. Unsigned integers can store much larger numbers than integer, but they are still integers. They can only be whole numbers. There are also unsigned floating point numbers. Floating point are decimal, so that could store a value like 1.1, 123, things like that. So the next data type we're going to do is called a string. That is probably something you're very familiar with without knowing it. String is basically text. And again, you have to end it with a semicolon. And there's the data type. And there's text. A string is, in fact, a character array, but we'll talk about that later. Just remember that I said that. And you can again assign it, but strings are assigned with quotation marks. You can type strings in the middle. So this string has build how group in it. You can have spaces, things like that. You can reset them obviously, but again, if I had it equal to SDG and I said it equals SDF, it no longer equals SDG. No variable stores the previous value of itself if you set it to equals. Okay, that's basically all the data types we're going to go through today, and thank you for watching. Hope it helped.